Call the public meeting of the Saginaw Independent School District 12. Let the record show that it's one of the board members is present and that this meeting will be posted in accordance with the Open Meeting Texas Government Code Chapter 551. Welcome everybody to the January meeting. We appreciate all the posters and items we have. We'll talk more about those later on tonight. We do have two speakers that wish to address the board. So I will introduce them as soon as I read the public comment participation rules. A few rules of order. Thank you for coming tonight to share your opinion. Regarding the public comment portion of the meeting, according to board policy, each speaker has up to 3 minutes to speak. The speaker also may provide a written statement to the board to supplement his or her comments if desired. Tonight, we're going to have the time on the screen that'll be above your head and facing the board members. The board may not ask or answer questions or make any comment regarding public comments not associated with posted agenda items. The board may respond with specific factual information on existing policy. May be furnished in response to inquiries on a posted agenda item. Please note that to comply with FERPA laws on student privacy, you may not mention the student by name. Accordingly, and additionally, you may not make derogatory comments about any individual staff member, either by name or title. Should you need to file a complaint, you may do this through our formal grievance process outlined in board policy. That being said, our first speaker tonight is Don Reynolds with UEA. Welcome, Don.
Good evening, President Newsom, Dr. Chisholm, and board members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. It gets harder every time I have to come up here trying to find a new way to express my thanks. So you're doing a good job, and I appreciate that. When looking at the definition of appreciation, you will find the two following definitions. The first, recognition and enjoyment of the good qualities of someone or something. And two, a full understanding of the situation. There are not enough words for me to express our thanks and appreciation for all that you do as a board. Have done for the teachers in our district. Makes it very hard to find ways to express this in unique ways. However, I'd like to take a moment to express our thanks for the second definition of appreciation. Thank you for always looking to gain more information, asking questions to gain clarity, and posing alternatives when needed as you put the best interests of all stakeholders front and center. I cannot begin to imagine how difficult a job you have, especially during this period of uncertainty, but you managed to make the job look easy. Tonight I come before you to offer thanks from the members of UEA and teachers across our district. We appreciate you and all the ways that you show your appreciation for us and the situation we are in. Thank you for providing a raise this year. Thank you for contributing more to our health care. And thank you for extending the COVID policy to ensure that no staff will lose pay or time off due to needing the quarantine. Thank you for making sure that we are a competitive district, and thank you for always listening. Tonight we have left you a small token of our thanks at your seat, and UEA is honored to make a donation to the EMS Education Foundation in your honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the kind words. Next we have a speaker regarding FCCLA, Megan Espinosa. Welcome, Megan.
Hi everyone, my name is Megan Espinosa and I am currently the President of FCCLA at Boswell High School and the Region 2 Vice President of Correspondence for the state of Texas. One of my jobs as a region officer is to speak in front of my school board about everything FCCLA has to offer. There's so many things, and I'm so grateful that this organization is even offered in our district. I've been in it for 4 years and have just greatly appreciated everything in it. I have grown so much as a person because of it, and I've seen so many other members grow as my term as officer of FCCLA just at my high school alone. I originally would break down crying if I had to talk in front of people, but now after my 4 years in it, I am talking to all of you right now, and I'm so grateful There's so many things in FCCLA, like competitions for one. Those are a big part of FCCLA, and you compete in all of these things that lead you to a career path that are all under family consumer science education, or just family consumer science alone, like culinary or hospitality and tourism, a little bit of everything. I had the chance to go to nationals my sophomore year in career investigation. It's one of their competitions where you research a career. My job as an officer this year is to be in charge of family consumer science assessments, which are another way to compete. And they test your knowledge on anything in family consumer science education, and everything inside of it. There's different tests you can take, and you can get different medals at the region and state level. I'm here today to advocate for more expansion and just providing information about FCCLA that you might not have known. And as a person in FCCLA, just showing how much it can change you as a person. And I never thought I would see myself here today, standing in front of all of you, talking about it, but I've just grown so much in it, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity, and so thankful that y'all have put it into the school curriculum. So thank you so much, and happy Board Appreciation Month.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes our speakers for tonight. Next, we'll move into the superintendent reports. The first is a finance report. It's a fund balance presentation. You can introduce Joshua McLaughlin with BOK Financial.
Indeed. So tonight, as Josh is coming up, I just want to comment, the three reports you see under finance tonight are all different sides of fund balance, and I know we've communicated some information to you about that. This is a very important time to understand how fund balance functions, especially with the legislative session opening up, and knowing that that is something that's been talked about in terms of how to deal with budget deficits at the state level, but also talking about projections into the future as we go out for bond elections and how fund balance works in a very important way in that area. And so we've asked for Josh to put together a report today, and that will be followed by our audit, which also has a little piece of there that has to do with fund balance of how we dealt with that this past year, which Carl Deaton will be here for that. And then finally, we'll finish with an evaluation of fund balance. And so I appreciate Josh's work on this. This is I would say a unique report to us, but probably the first of many you'll do with other districts as well. So thank you, Josh.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Before I go into this presentation, this was really designed to go talk to a state representative about the importance of fund balance versus what Eagle Mountain Saginaw's fund balance is and what the appropriate level is. So I wanted to use that as a sort of a preface before I go into this. Second, if you're wise, you would keep that 2-minute sign right there for me. So if I get a little long-winded, please raise that up and we'll go from there. All right, general fund balance. What's it for? Well, it's really to record the day-to-day operations and revenues and expenditures within the district's instructional programs and services. So this is really what we're going to focus on is the general fund balance. What is not, general fund balance is not necessarily cash. It is essentially the difference between your assets and liabilities. Most legislatures think it's cash. It's not. In terms of changes, how do you change fund balance? Obviously, it changes through assets or revenues and expenditures. Obviously, you have a hard time liquidating assets. Most often you get expenditures or accruals of revenue you anticipate coming from the state. Simply put, your fund balance is there as a tool and as a mechanism to get you through the day-to-day expenditures of the district, as well as in times of crisis. You know, one of the things we always rely on is other entities to tell you sort of what is an acceptable fund balance or why you need fund balance. In this case, GFAA, which is Government Finance Officers Association, says it is essential that governments maintain adequate levels of fund balance to mitigate current and future risk. Well, that makes sense from a financial standpoint. So, as a measure of fund balance, it gives you financial flexibility. Again, your revenues don't come in at equal annual installment or monthly installments, so it gives you that cushion to meet payroll and cash flow throughout the year. Again, lower revenues, higher expenditures, it gives you that cushion to sort of meet your day-to-day events. You know, in case of a pandemic, it allows you to essentially have the money on hand to buy laptops, things of that nature for any unexpended or unanticipated emergency. And it's an ongoing budget management tool. Fund balance should only be used for non-reoccurring expenditures. You don't want to pay salaries, ongoing raises, or things of that out of fund balance. Again, it is a stated best practice to maintain an adequate fund balance, not only by TEA, GOFA, Texas Association of School Business Officials, and more importantly, the bond rating agencies. So what is a acceptable level of general fund balance? It really depends on who you ask. Every entity really has a different story. No two governments are the same. No two school districts are the same. What may be good for Eagle Mountain Saginaw may not be good enough for your neighbor next door. So, GOFA, they recommend at least 2 months of general fund balance compared to your revenues or annual expenditures, while recognizing that you very well may need more depending on your unique situation. How about TEA? Well, TEA, as part of its first program, especially this is the first year of it, they now say you have to have assigned and unassigned fund balance of at least 75 days. If you have less, you will actually not get a superior rate. How about bond rating agencies? This is one of the key metrics that they use as part of your overall bond rating process. So if we look at Moody's, using 2018 data just across the nation, fund balance as a percentage of operating revenues is what they use as their debt metric, was about 23%. But if we look at Texas, in the AAA and AA categories, sort of the average has been north of 35 for Texas school districts. So you realize that Texas school districts actually carry a little bit more fund balance than schools nationwide. For comparison purposes, Eagle Mountain Saginaw is in that AA2 category. And you can see the median there is 53% versus the mid-30s. The reason is, again, this is a median. There are several highly concentrated school districts that have like a bunch of industrial companies or whatnot that have fund balances in excess of 100% of their annual revenues. If you can actually fathom that. So from a median standpoint, it is 53 in that rating category. In terms of Fitch, on a nationwide basis, they're roughly 20%. But again, here in Texas, 34. Again, Fitch rates Eagle Mountain Saginaw a AA minus. You can see in that rating category, it's roughly 35%, very similar to Moody's. How about the state of Texas? Well, their fund balance is roughly 15% of their annual expenditures. So let's talk about types of fund balance. There are all sorts of different types. We have non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned. I don't want to go through a whole accounting lesson here because I didn't do very well in accounting. But really the state focuses on two things. Really, they're focusing on your unrestricted fund balance, meaning you have the ability to actually spend part of that. And then they really focus on the assigned and unassigned. Unassigned is the most spendable fund balance that you have because you don't need essentially board approval to go spend all those dollars. Committed, obviously you need board approval for that. Assigned, you can move that in and out with district administration. All right, in terms of fund balance, if we look where you were at our statewide back in 2014-15, there was a total fund balance of about 15.1 billion. If we look at last year, meaning 18-19, the 19-20 data is not in yet, obviously, because not all the school districts have completed their audits yet, but fund balance was roughly 19.3 billion. Again, the two fund balances that the state particularly looks at are assigned and unassigned. In this case, unassigned is roughly 14.7 billion last year, but keep in mind, again, that's not all cash. There was a piece put out not too long ago that Dr. Chattel was kind enough to forward, done by TASB and TASBO, that said 5 billion of that number represents IOUs from the state. So again, even though it looks like there's a lot of money there, 14 billion, a lot of it is an IOU versus cash. So the rest of this presentation, we're going to focus on unassigned general fund balance. So if we look at the trends over the last 4 years, fund balance is going higher. The reason there was such an increase in 18-19 is all the school districts knew that there was about ready to be a new potential state funding system. The advent of House Bill 3, so more school districts tended to be a little bit more conservative going into that session. When we look at sort of fund balance spread about on a percentage of revenues, you'll see that the vast majority over the last several years, there's been an increase in fund balance, but it hasn't been that dramatic, meaning 4 or 5 years ago, there were 290 school districts that had a fund balance below 20%. Now there's 158. So there has been a trend for fund balance to increase over the last few years. So if I was a representative and I needed school districts to spend down part of that fund balance, where would I go look? So we wanted to sort of dive into the different sectors of school districts or the different classifications. One of it is district types. We have major urban, major suburban, other central city, on and on and on, and you'll see that there. But we focused it on major urban, major suburban, and other central cities from the standpoint, if you look, why there are only 138 school districts roughly, they account for the vast majority of the enrollment in the state. And consequently, they also account for the vast majority of the unassigned fund balance. So these 12.5% districts that make up all the school districts within the state account for roughly 63% of all unassigned fund balance. But more importantly, when you look at it as a percentage of revenues, they're at 24.5%, 27.9, 27.7, meaning as a percentage of actual revenues that are among the lowest, which means you don't have inflated fund balances for these particular sectors. Now we looked at it on a pure district size in terms of enrollment. Obviously, there are 111 school districts that had enrollment over 10,000 students. You could see there in the orange and the purple, they account for very close to 66% of all student enrollment. And again, it follows logically that they would have around 66% of unassigned fund balance. When you look over the last several years, those fund balances have grown by roughly 42%. Well, you can't look at it necessarily on a dollar basis because it gets misleading. Because even though they account for 64% of the unassigned fund balance, their expenditures also account for 69% of all expenditures by school districts within the state. And again, when you look at their unassigned fund balance as a percentage of revenues, they're among the lowest at 27% and 28%. Moreover, these are the school districts that are heavily issuing bonds. Of these 111 school districts, we had $63.35 billion of bonds outstanding as of the end of 19, which represents almost 72% of all the bonds outstanding. So if you start lowering their fund balance, you're going to start impacting bond ratings, which is ultimately going to cost the state through IFA and EDA more money, as well as the local taxpayer, because they're going to have to raise an additional tax. We also looked at this on a fast growth, non-fast growth basis. There are 82 school districts last year that would be considered fast growth, which is a roughly 10% of all school districts outstanding, but they equate to about 25% of the entire enrollment within the state. Consequently, you would expect them to have about 25%, and in this case, they have 25.9% of all unassigned fund balance. But if you look at the trends, who's growing fund balance? It's not the fast growth school districts. It's the non-fast growth school districts that have really seen the increase over the last 4 years, having gone up roughly 7.7% versus fast growth school districts at 2.4%. Now is probably the most interesting slide in the whole presentation, which is how does Eagle Mountain Saginaw compare to its different classifications. So I'm going to focus on 1819. The district's unassigned fund balance as a percentage of its revenues was roughly 22.4%, compared to the average for major suburban at 27.9%. It's less. The enrollment category, you're less than the 27%, less than fast growth, and less within other comparable school districts within regions 10 and 11. With that said, is 22.4% low? The answer is no, it's not. Again, this is one of the metrics within the district's overall bond rating, and you're rated substantially higher than on most of these other school districts at the AA2. So, what are the potential consequences of not maintaining enough fund balance? The biggest one is your bond rating. If your bond rating goes down one notch, it's about equal to about a 5 basis point change in the overall interest rate. Well, really, what does that mean? Well, on a $50 million bond sale, a 5 basis point change in the interest rate would equate to about $259,000. Well, that's a lot of money for each and individual school district, but let's think about it from a stated perspective. Over the last decade, there's been roughly $12.1 billion of Texas school district bonds issued on an annual basis. 5 basis points on $12.1 billion would change the interest cost about $60 million annually. That's a pretty big bill for the state and local taxpayers. So, keeping an adequate fund balance saves that cost. Keeping an adequate fund balance also allows districts not to have to borrow money to pay for other expenditures. There are a few school districts in the state that don't have enough cash on hand, and they have to issue tax anticipation notes to help cover cash flow deficits. Again, not having enough fund balance also gives you a diminished capacity from an operating standpoint to react to pandemics or other natural disasters. For the most part, if you look down towards the coast, hurricanes. And finally, as you well know, as a board, it is very hard to increase your fund balance given the current rules without cutting programs and or staff. So, as a bottom line, why it's completely acceptable for the legislature to look at the increases in fund balance over time. The consequences of forcing school districts to reduce those fund balance or provide a bunch of unfunded mandates could be worse than the problem itself. Because you could lower those bond ratings, which will potentially cost the state and taxpayers even more. I know I went through that relatively quickly, and I know there's a whole lot of information there. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Is there a way on page, we talked about the dollars of fund balance? Can you not call them dollars maybe? You mentioned they weren't dollars. On page 8 of the presentation where you had the dollar amount, is there some way maybe to rephrase that if you're giving it to legislatures?
Absolutely.
You just said don't convert it to dollars, but then your table converts it to dollars.
I think what we would be an even better graph, or as a follow-up to this, is say, out of that 14 billion, what is really cash versus non-cash? That way we can see that the lion's share of that, or at least a third of that, is really IOUs versus cash in the bank. It is a little bit different in the first formula, as we went through a little bit earlier. They're looking for 75 days of fund balance.
Of cash or of fund balance?
They're actually, the formula is set out for fund balance, unassigned and assigned to be equal 75 days of revenues. But they also have a subsequent test that requires 90 days of cash on hand. And that's cash or cash investments. But that's the one thing that most people think about. That's what I think about the vast majority of the time. And, I do this day in, day out. But you have to remind yourself that fund balance isn't necessarily cash in the bank available to spend.
One thing that Josh kind of touched on when he was talking about districts that have a large industrial core and they may have significant fluctuations in property values, think gas and oil, that type of thing. Well, our fluctuation has to do with being a fast growth school district in a growing community that also has an influx of charter schools in Tarrant County. And so we also have to be able to absorb that, just as we did a few years ago and had to use fund balance for ILT being built in the school district. So each district kind of has its own situation. And so later when we get to the, after the audit, the other report, and it shows how many days of fund balance we have, we feel comfortable with this number where we are now. But we also wanted to let you know, because as Josh and I were on a ratings call with Moody's and this was mentioned, and they mentioned fund balance, I'm like, well, we're doing really well with fund balance. Of course, we have worked on this for a number of years and maintained all kinds of challenges in the last decade. And then they mentioned us in comparison to other districts that are like. And I said, well, we've worked with the philosophy that we're not the community's bank, that if we have dollars that we don't need to function, that we would lower taxes, that we would make sure that we're very careful that we use the money that we need to operate and obviously be very prudent in how we have done that. And we've done that for many decades. It's been the philosophy in the school district. So we don't have any recommendations of any changes to come. It's just more to understand this, because we're going to hear a lot about fund balance in the next 3 to 4 months. And just want to make sure y'all knew where we were. And as I talked to one of our legislators that's a chair of one of the major committees on the House, and I mentioned this issue, and the response was one of surprise, not thinking that there is a residual effect of using these dollars, that basically it affects, if in our world, it affects your credit rating. You have less money in your savings, less money here, less money there, then your credit rating will go down. You'll have more difficulty getting a mortgage than if you have resources in the bank. It's the same philosophy. And so unfortunately, they call this a rainy day fund. It's not. I use the term, I don't know if Josh would even agree with this, as an operational savings account. It's an operational account in the sense that we have to depend upon it for certain elements, but it's not something you go to every day. You don't pay your bills out of your savings, you pay it out of your checking. And it's similar here. We're very careful about when we touch this, and when we do, we bring it to you and say, here's what we're doing. If it goes out of the, it goes into the unassigned or the committed areas. So anyway, just wanted to bring this to y'all just again for your knowledge, and Josh can continue to answer questions, but I wanted you to know that.
We appreciate it. Are you going to present that to the legislature, you think? Is that the end result of this effort?
That very well may be. What we're doing right now is giving this presentation to the vast majority of our clients. I think we're going to share that with their board of trustees. That way, if it becomes a hot topic during this session, we can mobilize quickly and try to board off any attempt to access that fund balance.
We will forward
Yeah,
this to our legislators.
I was surprised when I looked through this because we've talked about how fund balance affects the credit rate. I was surprised that where you broke it out by credit ratings, that there wasn't a higher correlation. Can you explain why that is? I mean, in the median, is it just because there's a bigger range and there's different things that lead? I was expecting to see it look very, like the highest fund balance and the highest ratings, and it doesn't exactly look like that. So it was.
No, and keep in mind, what goes into overall ratings, not only do you have the economy, but you have management, the bonds, or your debt outstanding, pensions, certain things. So this represents somewhere in the neighborhood of, 15 to 20% of the overall rating. So there isn't a huge correlation. Now, if we expanded this out and showed you all the rating categories from AAA down to, let's say, BBB, each individual, you would start to see correlation. Once you get down to some of the lower ratings, you'll see sort of the fund balances are less.
It might almost be good to add, because because we're saying that in the presentation and that graph doesn't look like, so if you're thinking of the election, I mean, I understand that, we've heard it specifically from our rating agencies. I'm just in the presentation, if we're using it towards legislatures, it might be our additional slide to clear that point up.
And I consider it kind of a tipping point item. These ratings calls are very interesting. They ask a whole lot of different things. They get into specifics of how you're going to deal with an issue, so a contemporary issue like COVID, but they'll also always ask about the longevity of the administration, the board, all kinds of community things. They're looking at a whole picture because they are risk adverse. They want to make sure that they're not taking a chance by giving us a good rating and then a district is not prudent in the way they're financially manage their district. And so I think this is, again, kind of one of those areas that prove itself out. If you're burning through your fund balance, and you're making your budget only by burning that fund balance, that would be a negative. And so there's a whole piece to this of how they look at it. But I'll tell you, this was the first time on a rating call that this was highlighted. And that's what gave me pause, especially with the direction that the legislature may go this spring, because I wouldn't want to be on that call if we were being expected to burn through fund balance to manage the ADA hold harmless that's not been forwarded into the spring semester. So.
All right. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
All right, next up is an audit update.
Good evening, trustees. We have tonight Carl Deaton from our accounting firm. He's our audit partner that's assigned to our district. Y'all, very familiar face for y'all. And anyways, he will cover the results of the 2019-20 audit. And those are coming around to you now.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rob, Dr. Stadwell, members of the board. These are the audited financial statements for the last fiscal year ending August 31st, 20. The opinion, independent auditor's report at the beginning of the report basically is what's called an unmodified opinion, in that in our opinion, these statements present fairly the financial position, the results of operations of the district for this last fiscal year. And If you'll turn to page 24, we'll look at general fund balance, since it's fresh on everyone's mind right now. The revenues and expenditures of the what are called the major funds of the district are tracked on pages 24 and 25. That left column on page 24, the general fund, you follow that to the bottom. You came into last year with $46 million of general fund balance. You had just short of an $8 million increase last year to an ending fund balance of $54.4 million. If you put the pencil to that 54 million into the total expenditures of last year, that's 28.1%. And I heard Josh reference the fund balance of the previous year in relation to total revenues. If you put the pencil to the total revenues, it's between 26 and 27%. So it increased from that 22 something that Josh mentioned up to over 25% as well, which I've always stood up here and told you you need to shoot for having the minimum 25% of 3 months on hand, and you accomplished that this last year because you had been below that for a little while. If you turn to page 27, you'll see how those actual results compare to the budget that you adopted for the general fund last year. And just to remind you, that final budget column, the second column, you projected to come close to around breaking even compared to the $8 million increase. Dollar-wise, that's a pretty big difference, but you look, when you talk about the size of the dollars you're talking about, especially on the revenue side, you were within $200,000 out of $200 million on actual revenues versus projected revenues. Expenditures were just right at $8 million below budget, which again is a large figure, but that's less than 4% of what you budgeted for expenditures. I've never seen a district get closer than within 2 to 3% the budget at most, because there's just so many variables that go into the budgeting numbers versus the actual. But percentage-wise, you saved almost 4% of what you had anticipated spending to achieve that $54 million fund balance. That's also impressive considering the fact that a lot of districts use their CARES funding to show those funds spent on expenditures in 1920, and y'all did not do that. You're planning on doing that in 2021. So $1.4 million of expenditures that would otherwise end up in the general fund are going to be shown against the CARES funding that was received last year, as well as you chose to wait till this year to spend the school safety and security grant, which is another $300,000 to $400,000, and there are instructional continuity funds coming out of the pandemic that you'll be spending here, that you were awarded all those last year. You chose to wait until 2021 to spend those. So those will help out in that those will be expenditures that won't hit the general fund this next year. All right, back on page 24. Also, you'll find the debt service fund. The debt service fund, bottom line, added close to $1 million to its fund balance. There were a couple of bond refundings last year that Josh and his group orchestrated for you to save future interest dollars. So those are those large numbers running through the bottom of that column. But bottom line, ending fund balance is $6.1 million, which out of $49 million is between 1 and 2 months worth of reserves in that fund. Capital Projects Fund, you had one new money bond sale this last year. In that third column on page 24, $135 million plus the premium. Over 2/3 of that is was still on hand at August 31st. That's available for spending this year, $111 million on fund balance there. There were a couple of primary funds that really suffered last year due to the pandemic, And one of those is on page 25, the Child Nutrition Fund. Your Child Nutrition Fund, like every other fund in the state, continued to pay out salaries in March through May when you had virtually no revenue, very little revenue coming in from serving meals. And I've stood up here in the past and complimented Aaron for generating $1 million surplus each year in that fund that's has available to spend on needs. You see a $653,000 loss last year. That's after $550,000 of indirect costs were transferred out to the general fund. So Aaron's loss was only about $100,000, which obviously is a long ways from $1 million, but that's just the nature of the Child Nutrition Fund environment last year with the pandemic.
And just a note real quick is that the indirect costs went to renovations. I think maybe 100% of those went to renovations in all of our cafeterias to bring our older cafeterias up to speed. Bryson was an example. No, not Bryson. I just lost. Elkins was one, and was Bryson one as well, please. So we're able to stay on top, and we're on top of that renovation plan right now. We'll be doing some additional adjustments this next year with lines, but we're really on top of that issue. So we really won't need those dollars like we did in previous years to keep with our renovation plan for our child nutrition program.
Okay, those are the 4 major funds of the district, 3 of which y'all are required to adopt a budget for each year. If you turn to page 29, you'll see the other fund that suffered last year, the fund that's considered an enterprise fund, and that's the child care fund, daycare. And you see a pretty significant loss there because, again, it's the same way, virtually no revenue coming in March through May, and salaries continue to be paid to those employees. $244,000 was transferred in from the general fund to cover that loss this last year. And then all of the other funds of the district, which are the title programs, the special ed IDB programs, the campus activity funds, all that sort of stuff, are back in the back part of the report. There's really nothing out of the ordinary there, but if you got all the way back to page 80 in the report, you saw 2 or 3 pages of the activity of those funds, but nothing really worthy to point out there. I did want to point out in the back of the report, though, on page 87, because I'm not sure how often you see your property tax activity for the year summarized like this, except in the audit report. But this is on page 87, basically the year summary of what was owed to the district in property taxes, what was levied, what was collected, and what's owed at the end of the year. What I wanted to point out is you had a very good collection year last year, which of course the majority of that happened prior to the pandemic occurring. But the left column shows just under $2.7 million of delinquent taxes at the beginning of the year, just over 2.7 at the end of the year. So you had, considering delinquents, taking delinquents into account, collections on those, you had almost 100% collection rate last year, which is excellent. And then a couple things I want to point out in the middle of the report. On page, just to make sure at least you saw it, on page 64, 65, we put a fairly lengthy footnote in about COVID, basically under the category or the heading risks and uncertainties, because obviously you know that the fallout from the pandemic as far as future state funding, ADA, even maybe property tax valuations is just unknown at this time. None of those issues could be quantified to put numbers in the report, but basically a narrative about the fact that you have those risks that you're going to have to deal with in the future is disclosed here. And then on page, really the only detailed footnote I want to point out is on page 48. Page 48 is the detail of your long-term debt. And I point that out simply because every year you have a lot of activity. In that additions column is the one new money bond sale and the 2 bond refundings that I pointed out in the statements. If you look at the amount outstanding at August 31/20, you basically paid off 3 issuances with the refundings, and 2 of the 3 you paid off were the larger ones that had capital appreciation bonds in them. So that line halfway down the page called accreted interest, you see most of that accreted interest accrual went away. So you got away from the majority of your outstanding capital appreciation bonds this last year with the refundings. The other thing that's almost come to an end in the middle of the page, the line capital leases. In the past, you've had a few capital leases for technology related items, and there is only one of those left at August 31st with one final annual payment of 50-something thousand due on it. All right, and then last but not least, need to point out on page 17, the consolidated asset and liability statement. The audit report is the only place you'll see this. It's only people like Josh and I that consider this something we have to deal with. But this is a consolidated asset and liability statement for the district. It combines all of the fund assets and liabilities we just looked at, as well as the hard capital assets that the district owes, the long-term debt that the district owes, and these TRS unfunded pension and OPEB, or health insurance liabilities. And I primarily point this out because since a few years ago, we were required to begin accruing the district's proportionate share of these unfunded TRS liabilities. It's thrown the bottom into a pretty ugly negative position, which is a similar situation that most any decent sized school district in the state is dealing with. You see a bottom line net of a negative 94, unrestricted net of 67, but there is about $125 million of these TRS liabilities that have been accrued and deducted out of these totals. And so when you add those back, you are well positive. You're a positive 30+ million on the bottom line, a positive almost 60 million on the unrestricted, which the unrestricted is one of the numbers the TEA looks at in the first rating, and they will look at that number with those TRS liabilities factored out of it. And so you have a very positive bottom line when those things are discounted out of it. So there are no dings to the first rating that appear on this schedule, even though the schedule on the surface looks pretty ugly. Okay, those are the things I wanted to cover. If you got any questions of me, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
I don't believe so. Thank you very much. We
Okay.
appreciate y'all.
All right, thank you.
I would like to make one statement before you leave. As someone that's not an accountant like Mr. Newcomb and with backgrounds like this, you always make it very clear, interesting, and something that's very understandable for someone like myself and maybe some other people that don't deal in this realm. So I appreciate that.
I second that. Thank you.
I want to, before Jane leaves too, just want to acknowledge Jane. Obviously, she and Carl spend many, many hours together working on this, of course, along with Rob, and appreciate all of her service as well. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Welch, we have the evaluation of the fund balance.
Yes, sir. Well, in continuation of the theme for the reports tonight, at least from the finance department, We want to bring to you this particular report that you've seen in past years, and we've updated it with most recent history, and just kind of carry forward with some thoughts on future targets. So as you saw in this was included in board book, and you can see where in the past, in that far right column under days of operation and fund balance, you can see that the district has evolved to moving beyond that 90-day target that we heard about for many years and has been a focus and a board goal, starting with last year, and I say last year being the prior year before the audit year we're talking about tonight, going back to 2019, moved to the 98-day level, and then under 2020, as we just heard from the auditor and presenting the results of the financial report with a surplus of addition into fund balance of right at 8 million. That number of days is now moved to a little over 102 days or almost 103 days based on the total expenditure levels for the district at this time. So, obviously a good level there, and what we would think that our rating agencies and others would find that we're at a strong financial level there to weather things that may pop up. And it's very important, of course, with a fast growth district, as Dr. Chadwell mentioned earlier, or a district that could be impacted by charters. We have those fluctuations, and that's one of the reasons that when I look at fund balance and I look at any kind of fund balance report, I tend not to look at 1 year in what's happened in 1 year. I don't think that that's a good indicator. I think you have to look at long-term trends and look at the trend of fund balance, because fund balance will have, it's a measurement of where we are on 8/31 at one point in time. Things happen before 8/31, August 31st, and things happen after August 31st that could be related or vice versa. It's all about timing, and so we could see some significant differences in fund balance and in contributing factors to fund balance from year to year. And that's why, again, I like a presentation like this where we can look at the trend and what will happen with the trend. So here we provided an additional look at what if our target for moving forward was $1 million. Again, going back to the philosophy, fund balance is not the community's bank. It is, that it exists to provide us the cash flows and to be a safety net for when things happen. And again, our budget is subject to a lot of projections when we go from year to year and we go into the budget process. Our revenues are all built upon projections and estimates, and the actualities of those as we evolve through the year can fluctuate. And so it's not having necessarily a hard number, knowing when you go into the year where you're going to land. So you will see fluctuations. And so again, this provides that an idea of what if, as our expenditures continue to grow each year with our growth, what if we targeted $1 million? Well, if you see here that with that target in mind over the next 3 years, the current year included, we maintain that level. And so, but there's a lot of things that can happen. So one of the things I wanted to touch base with tonight is going back to the fund balance number that was just presented to you, that $8 million number going into fund balance. There's a number of contributing factors to that may not necessarily relate to our ongoing or recurring expenditures or revenues. And so one of the things that contributed to that $8 million number is each year we have various property value audits that go back prior years. And if there is a favorable change to property values, since we've moved on from those years, 3 or 4 years ago, if we see a change in those property values, those audits are submitted to from the comptroller over to TEA, and that could change our funding for that year. 3 or 4 years ago, obviously that money comes into the current year. We had 1.8 million in additional dollars come into the 1920 year for some of those prior year property value audits. And so that's not necessarily a reflective amount and for operations in the current year. So we have to take that into consideration when we're looking at forecasting for next year. That's not returning revenue. Another thing is 1920 had some changes. House Bill 3 was put in place and enacted, well after the district had done quite a bit of the planning for the 1920 year. Had hired teachers, had put programs in place, had scheduled everything. And House Bill 3 was enacted, and a lot of the rules and allocations came about after the school year started. So there's actually several areas where we received allocations, but obviously did not have programs in place to utilize those full allocations. And so we'll have some obligations and some from the savings on those allocations. For instance, the early ed allotment. There was about $1.7 million in early ed allotment funds that would be valuable for our pre-K programs as those continue to grow. Obviously, those have, that's one of the areas where we saw where we saw impacts to our enrollment. And so there were expenditures to spend for the early ed allotment, both for planning in 1920, but even going into this year, there's challenges there in how we can utilize those funds. And so we actually have an obligation there of some savings of that, about 1.7 million in early ed monies that will need to come forward at some point. And so, so again, rollover funds, things that were savings in 1 year, in the 1920 year, but moving forward, we may have those obligations in future years to spend that money. Another area, as we talked about timing, we had a large iPad purchase of about 1.2 million back in the 1920 year. Unfortunately, those iPads were not delivered until, were delivered after 8/31. So they came in actually into the 2021 current year, not the 1920 year. So that's 1.2 million in savings that, again, went into fund balance that will actually come back and that will be an additional expenditure in the 2021 year. Another area is just the purchase of our Ppe and cleaning supplies for COVID purposes. We acquired quite a bit of product, and prior to the start of school, we ordered it, but a lot of that didn't come in until September, after September 1st. We had quite a bit come in, enough to get school started and have everything that we needed from that standpoint, but we acquired enough to make sure that we had plenty during shortages and everything. So anyways, that we did not necessarily have those expenditures hit in 1920. Those expenditures ended up being that was booked as inventory. So as we rolled into 2021 and we started utilizing that inventory, that will get expended in the current year. Just various items, we could account for 6 to 7 million of the 8 million that you see there with things that one time or just not necessarily reflective of operations in 1920. What we've identified about 4.5 to 5 million in expenditures, as I just mentioned, like the early ed allotment, those expenditures potentially coming forward, the iPads, and then the COVID PPE. When we add some of those items up, that's about 4.5 to 5 million of expenditures that may occur in the 2021 year. So again, looking at trend wise, as we look at fund balance, we may be putting 8 million in to fund balance as of 8/31/2020, but we may need to be pulling that out and maybe actually utilizing that, some of the fund balance before the end of the 2021 year. We continue to work on our projections as we look at what our needs are for the remaining part of the year in this environment. And so we'll continue to, that would be an update for February, is to look at some end of year potential projections there as we bring forth a budget amendment. But anyways, I wanted to talk through just kind of again, the trends with the fund balance. Any questions as far as what we're seeing? Yes, ma'am.
Well, he mentioned instructional continuing funds. Could you explain that? Is that federal? Does that come from federal or state?
The reference that he was making to, I believe, are I think they're federal funds, if I'm not mistaken.
And we had an opportunity to spend them last year, but we saved them for this year?
Well, the funds came in at the very end of the year, and Josh is still here, but he touched on that. The money came in, but there's no way you could buy materials, have them implemented in the 1920 school year. And so some districts did go ahead and try to purchase and put it on last year's, but we're very true to when we receive items. And so if we don't receive them by 8/31, then it rolls over to the next year. And so our accounting is very pure in that sense. So there were a number of things that all the operational connectivity dollars, the instructional continuity dollars, and all those things that even though those money was coming in, the PEP money, it really was going to be implemented for the 2021 school year. And
So we followed our budget, and then when that comes in,
Exactly.
okay.
Yeah, in fact, we just found out about the operational connectivity dollars, what was that in November, and then we were turning around that application within days, and
Yes.
and so those dollars are coming in, and so there were several grant dollars, but the grants came from the feds, but they went through the state, and each state, even though the purpose was for those dollars to go directly to the LEA, some states, including ours, tended to filter. And so one of the choices they made at the state level was to buy instructional materials that they then passed on to every school district in the state, whether you wanted them or asked for them or not. An example is Schoology, which is its mirror for us would be Canvas. And so for us to take something free, we would not use something that we've already used and trained for. So it was really, and they spent federal dollars for Schoology. And so in some cases, I just wish they'd passed it on. In other cases, like the PEP and Operation Connectivity, those were things that we needed and have used. I'm really happy about it. That was great to have those dollars to be able to reimburse our expenditures for our iPads and laptops. But it would have been honestly better for us, EMS, maybe not every district in the state, if we had just gotten the money and been able to do it ourselves. But I think they were looking at all 1,100 school districts, and some of these are very small and can't do that. But the problem is in some of the areas, operational connectivity as an example, is those materials did not come in until the school year already started. And so you actually, it was a nice thought, but it's kind of like getting a present after your birthday, and, or buying clothing for the ski trip that you took 2 months ago. It's too late.
But I commend you, our financial department, for not spending it until the funds do arrive.
Yes, thank you.
Because that's huge. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. Yes, the ESSER funds is one of the examples of 1.4 million that they mentioned that was distributed to all districts based on their Title I enrollments or Title I allocations. And it was in lieu of your state funding. But we chose to wait and record those expenditures in this current year. And so if we had done that in the prior year, in the 1920 year, we would have offset an additional, would have shown an additional 1.4 million going to fund balance. But obviously, those resources are available to us this year.
Thank you.
Mr. Willis, that was a fascinating hour on finance.
A lot of information about one particular topic, but it tells so much about where we are in the state and where we are in the district. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Lori, what do you think? You ready?
Yes,
All right, ladies, win the podium. We're going to move Operations C report down to later. I know it's 6, but if the board will allow us. Ms. Lori Mabry's here to give a report on Gifted and Talented Humanities update. Welcome.
Welcome. Board President Newcomb, Superintendent Chadwell, and members of the school board. This is on Eagle Mountain's Gifted and Talented program. A couple of pieces about it. First thing we have to do is we have to start with Aspire 2025 because it gives us the direction for the Gifted and Talented program, especially in steps 5 and 7 of the objective to maximize student potential. The next thing that we have to look at as GT teachers is the GT state plan. We are in compliance with the state plan, and these are the main areas that we are working on now. This is a flow chart that kind of gives you an idea of exactly what the GT program is, starting from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. We build a foundation with PACE, and we build depth and complexity and all the things that we need to within those classes as the students move up through the grade levels. PACE this year, the theme was contributions. Previously, the themes have been Inspire, Kindness, and Systems. The curriculum for PACE is from William and Mary GT units. We use Depth and Complexity and Think Law, and our year ends with Evening with the Experts, and this year it's on May 20th. One of the pieces that I introduced last year was the different GT service options, and this one was push-in collaboration, and that is the newest piece of what PACE is trying to get out into the schools. Push-in and collaboration will give an opportunity for PACE teachers to work alongside the classroom teacher to prepare learning experiences and support the classroom teachers and GT students that are clustered in the classrooms. PACE teachers will have the opportunity to be a part of the campus PLCs and with the data of the GT students. PACE teachers will have an opportunity to be on the campus and be a true part of the campus culture. Talent pool services fall under push-in collaboration, and to tell you more about talent pool services, the purpose of talent pool services is to increase the ethnic diversity within the GT program and to develop the background knowledge of the students involved. So we have added talent pool services at every elementary. We are concentrating on 1st and 2nd grades because the gifted and talented experts say that earlier intervention with gifted strategies has more emphasis on students with longer lasting results, and 1st and 2nd grade are where PACE does universal screeners, and we use that universal screener data along with any teacher nominations to make up this student list that are involved in the talent pools at each school. The strategies that are used in talent pools are book clubs, think law lessons, hands-on equations, which is an excellent math building program. We build background knowledge, we do puzzles and chess and checkers. We do the pieces that students don't naturally come to school with anymore. We're trying to build that so that it will be a part of the students as they move and grow up. One of the things you'll notice if you walk into a school and you ask the principal or the PACE teacher, what are your talent pool services? You may have to ask them more specifically. For example, at Greenfield, the talent pool service is called Enrichment Lessons. She serves over 250 students. She does 1 grade level a week, and that is on top of the testing and PACE student services and things as they're coming in. Talent pool services will eventually help address the gaps in equity and help students with filling in any gaps in their logical thinking processes and background knowledge. The other piece of the GT program that I wanted to talk about tonight is GT Humanities. What you're seeing right now and on the next 2 or 3 slides is data and the information from a GT survey that we did with the GT Humanities students, parents, and teachers in December.
Dr. Kelly Gloss, the Elementary and Secondary Social Studies Coordinator, and Dr. Cheryl Hunt, the Secondary ELA Coordinator, and I created the survey, and it's sent in the fall semester and the spring semester. This is some of the comments that the parents made. For example, loving the program, navigating her mind, engaging the students, challenging my daughter with rigor. My daughter initially struggled, but with familiarity began to thrive. Future considerations for the GT program. Professional learning to continue the teacher's learning. Future vertical team alignment meetings between the GT Humanities teachers and AP Capstone, and then the GT Humanities teachers and PACE. And that will create a vertical alignment. 4 new teachers were hired in 2021, this year, with the goal of 1 PACE teacher at each elementary school based on enrollment and student need. The expected outcomes of all of these changes that we're making. The utilization of the talent pool will help ensure equity in the identification process. Identifying and supporting underrepresented groups. Increased instructional support for differentiation in the classroom. PACE teacher support in campus PLC process to address the needs of advanced students and GT students, and stronger research skills used in AP Capstone presentations and exams as the students grow up with all of this research and data that they are doing. So in closing, we want to continue with our mission of creating a culture of excellence and connecting to the work and Aspire 2025 as we move forward. Thank you. Any questions?
I have one question.
Sure.
So I think I'm right, but I just want to clarify and make sure that I put on the talent pool services, the universal screener is not the only thing you use now, right?
We have 2 different universal screeners, actually kind of 3 if you want to look at that.
Okay.
Different tests, and then the third one is kind of, it's Birdie Kingor. You're taking activities and putting them together. So there's 3 there.
Okay.
Plus we're also asking the teachers. We want the teachers' input so that we can help them with their students. So that students, we create this list of kids, and as they're going along and they're doing these lessons, once they've finished that group of lessons, the kids are fluctuating in and out as that meets their needs or not. So it's teacher nominations as well. It's not just the testing.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure.
And Larry, another thing,
Because testing is not always, some students are quite gifted are not good test takers.
Exactly.
and that's what I like that you've got a
Yeah.
short one. But the other thing, I'd be curious to know that when we do test and we identify in the future, how many of them are pulled from the talent pool?
Yes.
Because I think that's going to speak volumes, and then it'll also be able to affirm what tests we are giving that are appropriate for those students also.
We definitely have plans to track those
That'd be
students
great.
so that we can see what's happening.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank
Anything
you.
else?
Well, I just want to mention that right now, we haven't made this final decision, but as y'all know, we added some GT positions this year. Because, I hate to use this sentence, you know what I'm about to say, because of COVID and some of things being slowed down in that area, and the challenge, we're testing a lot of people, but we don't have everybody, that's become cumbersome at times. We are not recommending an increase in staffing at this time for this next school year. However, we still want to hold true when the numbers demand it that they'll come. And so we see that us going that direction, things are going well, but we don't want to do that prematurely and without having the demand there for the teachers based on student enrollment. And so I know they're very happy to have additional staff in that area, especially those teachers that now have 1 school. And of course, that's our long-term vision there, is to have 1 teacher per school and to be able to serve the kids.
How close are we to that?
I would say, I'm going off the top of my head, I apologize, probably 2 years out to be able to pull that off. There's some schools that have some, I would say, lower enrollments that it may take them a little bit longer to do that. And so it may be possible that in those areas, we have to make the decision to put a staff member there with fairly low enrollment, and a significant amount of their time will be in this area of talent pool and identifying students to grow the population. So we're going with it with the attitude that the kids are there, we have to find them. not that, oh, there's no kids because they didn't qualify. That's kind of a dismissive, there's nobody there, but the other one, we're going to find them. And so I think we're going to have to put some staff, probably after this year, in some of those lower enrollment campuses to ensure that we handle the identification process.
All right, Lori, wanted to get you in before that break, so thank you for your report. All right, it is currently 6:15 p.m. on January 19th, 2021. This board will now recess for dinner and then reconvene in a closed meeting pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act, 551.071, purpose of consultation with board's attorney, 551.072, purpose of deliberating the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, 551.074, purpose of deliberating the appointment, employment, or reassignment duties of a public officer or employee, 551.075, for the purpose of deliberations regarding deployment or specific occasions for security, 551.082, considering discipline of a public school child, and 551.0821 to discuss specific personnel identified information about a student. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw Independent School District. The board is reconvening the public meeting on January 19th, 2021 at 7:00 p.m. and now consider the subject set forth in the posted agenda. Welcome everybody again to our January meeting, and for the opening ceremony we have Highland Middle School. Are we calling on Principal Coker, or are you?
Well, we will call on him here in just a second, but he's going to do it through video.
All right.
And so I will let you know the students that are going to be participating. And so from Highland Middle School, first we have Tessa Allen, an 8th grader. Parents are Holly and Matthew Allen. Tessa is involved with the Renaissance Club, Howland Hawk News Broadcasting, Theater Arts, Encore School of Dance, National Junior Honor Society. Interests include competitive dance, acting, journalism, UIL one-act play, and taking care of her cattle. The next student is Max Allman. Max is an 8th grader. Parent is Margarita Bazaruto. Organizations include Highland Hawk News journalist, cameraman, Renaissance Club, and yearbook. A self-taught ukulele player. I wish Max was here tonight. That would be awesome. Okay, maybe we'll have a performance later. Participating in UIL one-act play. Next is Amy Tren, 8th grader. Parents are Tren Heen and Hu Wen. Amy loves art, puzzles, math, and color by numbers. And Ethan Johnson. Ethan's parent is Dagan Shaver Johnson. Organization is the ESOD Studio Dance Team. Ethan loves spending time with his family and friends, participating in plays and basketball. And last is Candace Beamer. Candace is an 8th grader. Parent is Stacy Beamer. Has been involved with Girl Scouts for 7 years, and interests include UIL one-act play, reading, and theater arts for 3 years. So that's Highland Middle School. So take it away, Kirk.
Dr. Chadwell and honorable members of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw Independent School District Board of Trustees. On behalf of Highland Middle School, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to open tonight's board meeting.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Candace. On my left, I have two of our students. I have Amy Tren. Amy is an 8th grader who is the daughter of Tren Hen and Hu Nguyen. Amy loves art, puzzles, math, and color by number. I also have Ethan Johnson. Ethan is the son of Dagan Shaver Johnson. Ethan enjoys ESOD Studio Dance Team. He loves spending time with his family and friends and participating and plays basketball. So these two are going to lead us in the Texas pledge. Are we ready?
Okay.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
My name is Max Alman, and now for a moment of silence.
Hello, my name is Tessa Allen, and here at Highland, we would like to thank our school board members for working so hard during this unprecedented 2020/2021 school year. The school board members have worked so hard and have made possible countless of changes in this district, including providing technology and safe resources on a short period of time for thousands of students, constructing a new high school and stadium, just to name a few. We are so grateful for each and every one of you here at Highland, and we thank you for your hard work. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Highland Middle School. Next, we have some special recognitions, and the first is the Texas Association of School Boards by-board rebate check. Don Elsom and Mr. Rob Welch. There we go. Here we are. All right.
Good evening, trustees. Tonight we have Don Elson, as you mentioned, from Texas Association of School Boards in the by-board program. The by-board program is obviously a interlocal cooperative or interlocal agreement cooperative purchasing program. And, you know, a lot of value when we participate in those as a whole. They help us compete vendors and find the best value for the district utilizing our resources, but also it reduces our administrative costs and just in the administrative process and in acquiring those our purchases and our various needs for the district. But under the structure of the by-board program, it also provides us a rebate. And tonight, our 2019-20 rebate totals $78,338. All
right.
And I'd just like to say thank y'all so much for letting me come. I know that y'all got a busy night, especially with board recognition, and I sat behind one of these tables for a while myself, and I know that it's a wonderful month on Board Recognition Month. I just want to thank you too for your support with by-board and with TASB. We're here to support you at the legislature level and all of that, and by-board is just one of those many vehicles we work with, and we want to do whatever we can to help, and so please reach out at any time, and we'll be glad to help. Thank you very much.
I like the 6 feet at the bottom. Hold that up so
That's
good.
That's social distance.
I'd also like to commend your staff that works on this. They are the second, y'all received the second highest rebate in Region 11, only behind Fort Worth ISD. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Our next special recognition is School Board Recognition Month. Christina Williamson.
Each year, the governor and the Texas Association of School Boards designate January as School Board Recognition Month. This year's theme is Navigating to Success. You can see this theme clearly in all of our lovely student artwork that covers our boardroom currently. Additionally, each school adopts a board member to whom they show appreciation throughout the year. Also, we celebrate board members during tonight's meeting with campus-made posters, cards, and trinkets of thanks for your commitment to our EMS ISD students, employees, and community. Now let's take a look at this video that was created to show you just how much we appreciate you, our board members.
I'm on a journey, but I'm not alone. Luckily, the school board's helping me find my way. Without their help, I can veer off course in these unfamiliar waters. Thank you, board members, for setting the goals and priorities that keep us moving in the right direction. January is School Board Recognition Month. Take a minute to thank our trustees for helping us navigate to success.
A special thanks to our students for helping create that video and for our communications videographer, Chris Hill, for putting it all together. I once heard that one of the greatest gifts you can give someone is your time. And that is what you as board members have given and continue to give to the students, staff, and EMS ISD community. In addition to overseeing the district budget, listening to the concerns of parents, staff, and students, ensuring teacher pay remains competitive so that we have top talent in our classrooms, providing ways for us to build new facilities or renovate existing ones. The list is infinite and your work is nonstop. Thank you for your time and thank you for your dedication to everyone at EMS ISD. This concludes our recognition.
Christine, I just want to say thank you, and also just for our board, we thank a board of trustees, and that word trustee, that you've been entrusted with the future of our school district. You've been entrusted with our children, and you do such a faithful job in that area. I think that word trustee is a very powerful word and really more denotes how important this position is, even more than board member. And I just am very thankful to serve with y'all now over a decade and just watch the level of attention that you put into every decision. And as we enter into board meetings with the intention of doing what's best for kids and also doing what's best for our staff and supporting them in their classrooms so that they can help our kids. And so I just want to thank you on behalf of the school district. Of course, this is not a normal time, but I wish the people that were on the online right now could see the creativity in this room, which is incredible. Every time I look at this, I'm like, I couldn't do that, I couldn't do that, I couldn't do that, I would never thought of that. But just some really incredible art, but just also creative ways to say thank you. So we told them to do it low key. So if this is low key, I'm not sure what not low key is. So I know they care about y'all very much, and I very much appreciate y'all. So thank you very much. So we'll give y'all an applause. Not the same with 12 people.
Thank you, Dr. Shell. Well, no, we appreciate it. Each of us appreciate this, the gifts that are before us and the tokens of the appreciation expressed in the signs that are around the room. And I know I've won, and I feel like the board members will miss those personal interactions we usually get to have this time of year in the classroom. So hopefully we'll be back to that someday soon, and we can get by those schools that we were supposed to be visiting this year, but we appreciate it. And thank you very much.
Absolutely.
We move now to action items. At this time, on behalf of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD, I declare an open hearing on the 2019-2020 Texas Academic Performance Report in compliance with Texas Administration Code Title 19, Chapter 61, Subchapter BB, Commissioner's Rules on Reporting Requirements, Section 61.1022 little c, Texas Academic Performance Report. And Dr. Parker, if you please.
I'm ready, but before I begin, I want to say a personal thank you to the board members. At your seats, you see a gold bag, and then within that bag is just a token of appreciation and a memory to keep for the authorship in support of Aspire 2025. We feel like we have a very strong foundation moving forward in our strategic plan, and feel very positive about the work in Aspire 2025 and the creation thereof. And that's just a token of my appreciation for the work that you guys helped do and lead. So thank you so much for that. And I feel like I'm about to jump in with several numbers as well in the Tapper report, because according to AIB Local and under the Texas Education Code 39.306, the intent of the Tapper is to inform the public about the educational performance of the district and of each campus in the district in relation to the district, state, and comparable group of schools. The Tapper presents the campus performance information as well as the student, staff, and financial information required by the statute. A complete copy of the TAPR for the district is attached to this report for your review. TEA suspended the state accountability test for the 2019-2020 school year. We were pretty happy about that. Thus, there is no 2019-2020 academic data based on STAR or EOC for this report. TEA rolled up the 2018-2019 data and included it in the report that you've received this year, that we have received, and that will be posted on our website. This report will cover information required by AIB Legal regarding annual reporting, including the board goals for early literacy, early mathematics, and the college career military readiness. I have also included for TEA requirements for reporting post-secondary Texas public institution performance and the requirement to address violent and criminal incidences. As you are aware, one of our core beliefs is in Inspire, and that is accountability is key to success. This report definitely shows that accountability, as evidenced by the state ranking that is shown in the areas of assistance. Here you see the 2019 B ranking in place, even though in 2020, due to the declared state of disaster, because of the pandemic, the state accountability tests were not given and rankings were not changed. We will see that as we move into next year's report as well. We'll be taking our EOCs and our STAR, but they will be for participation and data collection to determine our growth and achievement, but it will not be part of the accountability system. So our B ranking, which is at an 88, will continue. You also see directly under the accountability piece, the special ed education determination status. We ranked a level 2. This means needs assistance. The new RDA, which is results-driven accountability, replaced the PBMAS of previous years, which was PEAMS-driven. Our goal is to be at a level 1 of a 4-level system, with a level 4 being the highest intervention, and at level 4 TEA comes in and tells you basically what you will do. At your place setting, you'll find a one-pager. Looks like this. Dr. Hughes created this as an explanation of the assistance needed in special education and our plans moving forward to address this need. In a full special education report to be given in a future board meeting, you'll receive more information and the success that is occurring of our already implemented interventions, which includes increasing the number of students in our 3-year-old program and establishment of our success academies. I do want to share that in the needs assistance, there are 35 indicators on the RDA, and missing an indicator for 2 consecutive years would put you on a needs assistance at a level 2. So it could be 1 or 2, but out of 35 indicators, one of those can create a needs assistance title. So I just want you to be aware of that. Any questions regarding this piece before we move forward?
We were missing it on indicators 9 and 18.
9 and 18, and again, that is in discipline and least restrictive environment for our early students, 3-year-old program. And so we've increased the number of children in our early education program already. We've already implemented that, and we've addressed through some of our success academies steps in our, my mind went totally blank, positive reinforcement, some of the issues with the discipline. But if you look at those numbers, you can see it's like a below, it's a 0 to 19 on the indicator number 18, and we're at a 34.8, and our the region is at a 35.4. I do look for that to decrease because of our remote learning and the decreased number of incidences there. So I think that it's very likely we'll be on target, and then our indicator number 9, we should be able to move off of the needs assistance piece. This is the first year that they put it as part of the TAPR at the very front page. That we haven't seen that in the past.
Thank you for that information.
Yes.
The extra information.
And both Dr. Hughes and I are here, so if you have questions later, you're always welcome to give me a call or grab us after the board meeting. Additionally,
Can I say something?
yes, ma'am.
Excuse me. Can you explain a little bit, Dr. Hughes, what is the total disciplinary removal rate? What does that encompass?
That means you're removing students out of the classroom for disruptive behavior, and you're doing it at a disproportionate rate as compared to the children who are not under the special ed umbrella.
And, okay.
Okay?
So, okay, and, okay. I'll
You
let
sure? Okay.
And we will come back with a full report on special education update. So should you have questions on on these issues or any other questions that you have programmatically, just let us know and we can include that in the report moving forward. And as mentioned on Indicator 9, much of that has been addressed this year in terms of having like peers, but this all stemmed from our students that come in for speech only and come into and receive services for that, but that actually are not commingling with other students because they come in just for speech and then leave. And those students are measured in this indicator, and so we have to address that. And it's interesting because if these students, we were serving them at their home or in an early childhood center, it wouldn't be an issue. So it's only in this context of where they're receiving services.
Walk-in services.
So
and I know what I want to say. Because removal has to take place. And so did they give us like tenets to follow and that we can only remove them for this? And I guess I'm a little confused here. Sure.
So what we're looking at is the proportion of students within different groups that are experiencing removals more than 10 days of removal. And so what we're looking at right now is we're disaggregating the data, and that's one of the things that we're looking at. If they're mandatory removals, then we're looking at trends in those data to see, are they assault in nature, or is it student assault, is it drug, is substance abuse? So then we can do targeted interventions at those particular campuses with those targeted groups to try to reduce the removals, especially when they are mandatory.
And remember, it's removal from the classroom, not necessarily the campus.
Okay.
Okay, removal from the classroom, they're out of the classroom environment.
But to answer your question, we are held accountable even for mandatories. So we have to go back to the behavior that it stemmed from. And so as she mentioned, these are placements of students even staying in the office for a period of time. And so if they're not receiving their primary instruction. So I'll say, you'll look at the region here. This is, they're pushing very hard in this area to change the way districts discipline. And we obviously don't just discipline kids because it's easy to do. We find that it's appropriate to do. And what they're pushing us to do is to get at the behavior that started it to begin with. And so those are things, and we can go into, again, greater detail on how we do that, but also maintain the environment that we want to have in our schools and what's important.
In the multi-tiered system.
That's right. Our MTSS
system. That should help,
And it
I'm already
already is
seeing that
making-
correlation of improvement as, yeah.
Remember our data that we're looking at, when you look at TAPR, you look at all of this, it's not 2020 data. It's
Right.
all 2018, 2019, and sometimes 2017. I mean, it goes back 2 years in this. So we place the Success Academies.
Right.
We are positive action, the work that we're trying to do for character ed and all of these things are helping, but grabbing it earlier, we had a hard year.
And I have one other question. So the walk-in speech services, are those all just individuals, so they're not commingled with kids from other classrooms?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So they're individual speech then?
Right, and they may come in and join other little ones for their speech therapy session, but they also too they have an IEP. So there's
Right,
an
okay,
opportunity
right,
for us
yeah,
to
okay.
provide integrated
Gotcha.
speech therapy.
Yeah, they're still considered, yeah, gotcha. Thank you.
Is that number a percentage or per 100 or 34.8 that, I don't know, is that a percentage as compared to the regular ed population?
Yes,
30?
that's correct.
Okay.
Yes, when you look at the numerator and the denominator, you look at the portion of general removal of students without IEPs from the general population, and then you look at the removal of students students with IEPs to see it, and so we have a disproportionate rate of removals for students with IEPs within certain subgroups.
She just said something, I just want y'all to catch. It's by subgroup. It's not just of the entire population. So then it's.
ELL, bilingual, our federal programs are economically disadvantaged, all of those in the 35 indicators. Special ed has 18 indicators that we are held accountable for. And then the other subgroups are the other 17.
Well, that's the numerator, so your denominator would be if more kids were removed for discipline in the regular ed, then that number would
That's
also
right.
come down. Just thought.
Right. But then there's other things that catch you on that one too.
Yeah. I can't say on that, remember. Any questions, and we'll move on. As part of the requirement, thank you, appreciate you being here. As part of the requirement on the TAPR report for reporting is the campuses receiving a distinction. Well, I went ahead and put this in the report, but it's the same from last year and will continue. And in addition to the campuses receiving a distinction, we also, as discussed in November's meeting in our district, our improvement plan report, district improvement plan report, we have 3 major objectives addressed in our district and campus improvement plans. These are listed here, and they focus on student achievement, collaborative community, and providing a safe and nurturing environment. And these are the goals that we're working, or the objectives that we're working towards this year. In addition to that, we created and submitted for your approval the board goals in those 3 key areas: early literacy, early mathematics, and CCMR. Due to TEA's cancellation of the state accountability test for 2019, data for tracking showed for progress is not available, but the district data showed strong progress in these 2 areas before the shutdown. I will tell you, several of us grieved in here because we knew we were on track, and then we had the shutdown, and now we've had experience in what we currently are, but we're still working hard and have good plans in place to address the gap. The positive here is on the CCMR data. In 2019 data, we were at 62.7. This year, based on 2019 data, not the 2020, because remember it's 2 years, we increased to 67.2. So if you go back here at the goal in 2020, we wanted to be at 65. We actually met the 21 goal by attaining that 67.5. This is very exciting. I wanted to do a shout out to Tricia Lovett, who helped us working with the campus to keep us on target for meeting those goals. Very, very pleased. There are a few key things on the TAPR I also wanted to highlight before moving on. The annual graduates for career or military readiness increased by 5.1%. Graduates with a completed IEP, individual education plan, or workforce readiness skills increased by 1.6%. And the career and technology coherent sequence coursework aligned with industry-based certifications increased from 29.3 to 41.7%. Now here's the negative. They're taking that away. And they're taking away the Armed Forces Enlistment Indicator this next year. So it's hard because there's different moving targets on this TAPR that we feel like we're in sync, we're moving forward, and then it's like, oh, well, that's taken away and we're changing it. But we are still held accountable for certification, for the college readiness and career readiness, those pieces. The TSIA, which is your college placement test, also showed increases. And while we had a little slight decrease, like by a point in AP success in 2019, not 2020, 2019, we saw a major increase in the participants in ACT and SAT, up by 21%. The impact on scores, though, was a 1 to 2% decrease, which we would kind of expect that to see with increased participation. Now, here's the other little ringer there. Knowing the data here is from 2019, so next year's data will be based on 2020, And fewer of our students are choosing to take the SAT and ACT because fewer of our universities are requiring it in the pandemic. So I just want to prepare you, expect to see a slump there. It's interesting. It's just a mixture of news. We also are required to address the violent or criminal incidences. In regards to this, we actually are not able, because we have such a low number, disclosing the number of incidences due to, it would be a potential violation of FERPA because the number is so low, but we're still required to report on this. We're also required to have specific policies that address the requirements TEA has established regarding trauma-informed care and threat assessment. Our team in Ed Services has worked closely to address the specific needs of our students and our staff in these areas. We also have specific training listed here in our compliance bundle that address the TEA requirements. I'm pleased to report all requirements have been met as required by TEA. The last thing that needs to be addressed in a board meeting, in a public meeting, is the post-secondary Texas Public Institution performance. This is a required annual report that addresses the graduates of 2 years ago, so 2018, in institutions of higher learning in Texas. That's key, in Texas. So when you see unknown or not trackable, keep in mind we're only able to track 2 and 4 universities in Texas. Here, the information here shows the number of Texas in attendance and their GPA for that year, 2018 graduates. We saw growth at every school in the 3.0 or higher GPA for those first year enrollees, which I think is a big celebration. Much of the data, we saw a little bit of growth in the total graduates because of our growth in that class, but the biggest growth was in the 3.0 GPA. This data comes from the Texas Higher Education Data.org. We are now open for comments.
All right, at this time, the hearing is open to public comment. Please step to the podium if you wish to be heard. I believe they would have had to sign up.
They would have had to sign up.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, at this time, the public hearing on the tap room for the district is closed. Please be advised that the tap room report will be posted on the district website for further public review.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next action item is to adopt the order to call the 2021 school trustee general election.
Well, good evening once again, trustees. As President Newcomb mentioned, we have on the agenda tonight the order to call the May 1st, 2021 school trustee general election. This election is for places 1 and 2, currently held by Dr. Marilyn Tolbert and Paige Ream, respectively. And their terms do expire this year. And at this point, we will provide the order was provided in the board book and does contain all information regarding early voting by personal appearance and early voting by mail and all the details. I will also mention that both incumbents, Dr. Marilyn Tolbert and Paige Ream, have filed for re-election in their respective spots.
All right.
Make a motion to adopt the order of election for the trustee general election on Saturday, May 1st, 2021.
Second.
Motion by Tim, second by Liz, to adopt the order to call the 2021 school trustee general election. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 6-0. Next, Mr. Welch, is the 1920 financial audit report.
Make a motion to approve the 2019-2020 financial audit report.
Motion by Tim and second by Liz to approve the 1920 financial audit report. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 6-0. Next is to set the board meeting dates for July 21 through June 22. Dr. Chadwick.
So I just want to mention that we did make a change with the September date, right?
Yes.
So the September date, we moved to the third Monday versus the fourth. As y'all know, we've had TASB, and we've come right back to a board meeting that Monday. Made the determination to move it before, so it wouldn't be quite so much on y'all to do one day after the other. So that's the only really major change there.
I move that the board approve the 2021-2022 board meeting dates as presented.
Second.
Motion by Liz, second by Paige to approve the 21-22 board meeting dates. Comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? There are none. Motion carries 6-0. Next is to act on the purchase and installation of miscellaneous furniture items for Lake Country Elementary School. Mr. Jones, welcome.
I make a motion to award to Indico Sales, Inc. for the purchase and installation of miscellaneous furniture items for Lake Country Elementary School in the amount of $975,644.
Motion by Tim, second by Paige. Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Consider the approval of the resolution providing superintendent with additional authority during COVID-19 emergency. Dr. Dawkins.
Well, Dr. Dawkins was unable to be here this evening.
All
So
right.
Dr. Gamel is here to provide information on this.
All right.
Before she gets started, just a reminder, you did pass the item that we brought to you in December. We promised to bring information back to you in January to more encompass that no person would lose any leave days that were responsive to COVID by mandatory quarantine because of their work. And so that's the information that you see there. I also want to just mention that the feds did not extend the FCCRA leave. So there's a few districts out there that got ahead of that. Thankfully, we were one of them. And of course, this is even farther. So I was a little surprised and definitely disappointed that the feds did not do that. But I'm very pleased that we were proactive in that area and that this addresses it in a more full way. And so, Dr. Gamel.
Thank you, Dr. Cadwell. President Newcomb, Board of Trustees, we're considering the approval of a resolution providing the superintendent with additional authority during the COVID-19 emergency. There's been a significant amount of work between the Human Resources Department and the Finance Department to make sure that we hold our employees harmless. And this resolution has come as a result of that work. And after I read it, Mr. Welch may have some comment on the work in that area, but we do want to make sure that we take care of our employees. And so the attached resolution of the Board of Trustees of Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD regarding delegation of additional authority during COVID-19 emergency provide the public purpose for the district to hold employees harmless, both in pay and leave for district-initiated close contact quarantines, including situations where a campus or work site moves to full remote operation. District-provided COVID hold harmless leave will be approved through the revisions to the existing COVID-related leave reporting process. And we have adapted our processes to be sure that we can go back and reconcile for all employees. So that has already taken place. Upon approval, a reconciliation of prior leave taken will commence and the eligible provisions will be applied retroactively. The authority delegated by this resolution expires with the end of the 2020-2021 work calendars on June 30th, 2021.
Make a motion to approve the resolution providing the superintendent with additional authority during COVID-19 emergency as presented.
Second.
Motion by Tim, second by Marilyn. Thank you, Marilyn, for that help. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is to act on the purchase and installation of the artificial turf at Chisholm Trail High School and Saginaw High School baseball and softball fields. Mr. Kidd, welcome.
Good evening, Dr. Chadwell, members of the board. Tonight I bring to you the proposal for the 2017 bond approved installation of turf at Chisholm Trail and Saginaw High Schools for baseball and softball fields. The board agenda item identifies the procurement method, which is the one GPA purchasing cooperative, and the proposal from Hellas that provides the cost of work and the scope of work to be performed at each campus. The Hellas proposal for the work came in less than the same work provided for the Boswell High School baseball and softball fields. The turf installation will begin at the end of the baseball and softball seasons for Chisholm Trail and Saginaw High Schools respectively. Demo, grading, soil preparation, and installation is expected to be completed by mid-September of this year. The recommendation is to award Hellas Construction Inc. For the purchase installation of artificial turf of Chisholm Trail High School and Saginaw High School baseball and softball fields in the amount of $5,642,435. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Motion by Tim, second by Marilyn. Questions? Seeing none. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none.
Thank you.
Carries 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Kidd.
As we transition, this does mirror the campus, the installation at Boswell, so it will mirror that. It'll be the same quality of field and same material, et cetera. So by the end of this whole process, we'll have consistency on every field with geofill, and which is a product that we have already seen great results in this year.
All right, next is approve the donation of schools to Boswell boys basketball program. Mr. Welch.
So on the, pardon me. So on the donation tonight, we have an NBA player, Marcus Smart, from the Boston Celtics. This is a former player of Coach Kenny Boren and Brian Blackburn from their days at the Flower Mound Marcus. And through that connection, Marcus Smart has reached out to them and has provided Puma basketball shoes that are limited edition and brand new. Brand new model, and as part of his reaching out to the DFW community, and so through that connection, he's provided these shoes as a donation, and so they are provided tonight as part of our board policy in approving donations.
I make a motion to accept the donation of 15 pairs of Puma basketball shoes from NBA player Marcus Smart to be used by the Boswell High School boys basketball program.
Second.
Motion by Tim, second by Liz. Any questions? None. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
We do want to thank Mr. Smart for his donation. He is a parent in our district now with a child that is at Boswell High School, and so it's nice to have him in the community and his effect on the programs. You know, it's great to have a former NBA player. I think that kind of raises the level of attention there to their basketball program, and we can usually use his resources. He's currently working for the NBA. He is a person that provides support, mentoring young NBA athletes and managing all elements of their life coming into, some of these gentlemen are very young, and helping them with financial judgment and all kinds of different things in that area. And so he's looking at how he can provide some of that same support for us and for our athletes, not just at Boswell, but at all three of our high schools.
Sounds good. That concludes the action item of the report. We do have 2 reports to pick back up from the report session at 5 o'clock. The first is the operations report. That's a construction update. Mr. Fleetwell. On page 141.
Tonight we'll start at looking at Boswell High School. And I think, first off, we'll look at the slab. That consists of over there in the freshman locker room area. It's also the training room and the coach's office and dressing areas. So that was one of the last large slabs that will be poured at that site. The one on the right, you see the big footings for the turf room, the 60-yard turf facility. So that material, the siding and the roofing will be coming on site toward the end of this month, first part of next month. And you know, when you start to see the magnitude of this project, when they started putting the columns up, and the pictures don't show this because they came up last week, but you see the massive 2-story part of that starting to come together when it actually will be higher than the Newcomb gym. So it's one on the left shows that's the plumbing for the showers and the new varsity locker room areas, and to the right is that's a dividing hallway. Those are those 3 insets on the right side. Those are the trophy cases, and to the right, that is where the coaches' offices are located. The stairways on the far left. So the gymnastics gym is on the other side. That's where you would see the new dressing rooms for that located, but it goes all the way up, and it's a split level because of the different elevations. But it's progressing. It's changing dramatically. It's starting to look like a building site now that everything's coming out of the ground. So. One of the better pictures is you can kind of see this right here. This is from the visitor stands looking to the whole project, and you can just start to see the mass coming together. Where you see those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you see those windows up in front, that's the training room area. And then of course the dressing rooms are on the left side there. And like I said, I mentioned the columns, the weight room for the second floor are put in place. You can't see those, but then on the far right by the Newcomb gym, you can see the big beams that are put in place and how deep they go to the ground to support the structure. So I thought the visitor stand was just a good place to look at all that and get a good view of that. But it's progressing. It's going to be right there at the end, the last week before, before August 1st. That's when it's planned to be completed. One of the last things that will happen will be the turf room. Once we move them out into the main building, then they'll demo the existing turf room and put in the parking lot back there for the coaches and the little turnaround. So there was a picture, I just didn't put it in here, but it's kind of, we've seen it, it's on the home side, they're just drilling the piers. So once they get all the piers in, that's when you'll start seeing the main grandstands go in. But from the visitor stands, that's going to be the older structure, and currently that'll stay in place along with the auxiliary bleachers.
That's the visitor stands will be the only thing remaining from that whole project besides the track and the football field.
That's correct. The concession stands, we refurbished those.
And the outbuildings remain, the ones
The
that
visitor stands are going away, right?
Well, that depends. That was not in the original scope of the work to have the visitors. I mean, eventually they would get new ones, but the home stands are the ones that are the newer ones with the press box. If we were to move the visitor stands out of the way, then we're going to have to, which we can, there's the contingency funds. We'd have to do that through the contingency funds. And that would take, it's a little bit different than Chisholm Trail because we're still hunting for that 7,500 seats from the home and visitors. So there's not much as room on this side, so they'll be more linear, but they'll hold around 3,000, 2,900. If we put new bleachers, when we do that, that's how many they'll hold. So the whole stadium will hold around 7,600.
So is that not going to be done in the process now between now and the start of school?
If we move forward with it, we will use our contingency funds and we can put that in. The thing I would worry about that we couldn't do like Chisholm is the storage. because of the amount of money, that's just like building a building. So that's about $1 million additional to put that storage underneath. But we could go with the visitor stands with the contingency monies. And there'll be some, the auxiliary field, we'll be close to being able to do that, but we probably have to thin some other projects up on the Boswell to be able to put that in at a later date. I think if we moved ahead with the visitor stands, we would be able to, we need to get that into production. And again, that would be one of the, right in the August timeframe, if we put those in and started that process. So.
Mr. Welch, what do we utilize the storage for under the visitors currently?
Well, really at Boswell, there really is no storage currently, except we have sea trains that are out there by the mowing shed. We're going to put in the storage on the home side, which it currently doesn't have. Look, it's underneath and it's hid by a screen, but we're putting in what is it, Chisholm Trail, the equivalent of that.
Okay.
Plus it'll be waterproof. So.
Were you asking what was stored at Chisholm Trail under the visitor stands?
Well, I thought, I misunderstood. I thought we already had current storage under our visitor stands at Boswell.
I see.
But we don't?
There's outside equipment. It's not conditioned, it's just open with the fencing, so it's outside equipment typically.
But I do know we do have that at Chisholm Trail.
Yes, we have an abundance of storage at Chisholm Trail. I think we could still grow into that facility. But.
So in light of what Mr. Daughtry said, could the stands go up minus the storage, or does that have to go hand in hand?
No, it could go separate. And that's probably how we would need to in the beginning.
Okay.
Just the amount of money that we'd have to get down the road to it and just see how much. Right now, we won't have to modify the contract, so we can use what the funds have been allocated in this project.
And what he was touching on earlier, the cost of storage in a classroom, let's say, basically the same price. You have to put fire sprinklers in both of them. You have to do all these kinds of things. Whereas if this was not a conditioned space and this was more open and wasn't equivalent to Chisholm Trail, the cost comes down significantly because you don't have to put fire suppression systems in, and it's not conditioned. You don't have air conditioning, heating systems in, but you still could have new bleachers. I mean, you can still have new bleachers, and it's not, it's not universal in even new stadiums to have conditioned spaces underneath your visitors' bleachers. We just happen to do that at Chisholm.
But we wouldn't, if we went ahead and put in the bleachers without storage, we wouldn't be incurring any additional costs if we later wanted to go. Because we did it step function, it wouldn't create additional costs because we did the bleachers without the condition and then had to add it later.
No, I think we would set it up to where eventually we wanted to put the storage in.
You could convert it at no additional cost.
The slab could support that structure in there. I think we would do any of those things we needed to for the future, so we wouldn't have to tear it out and redo it.
And do we use that space today at Chisholm?
Well, currently Boswell doesn't have that space.
No, but at Chisholm, do we? I don't want to just make all the schools the same if it's not getting utilized in the schools that have it today, just so that they can be the same. If it's needed, that's one thing, but from what you said, I got the impression that maybe we have more storage than we need.
From what we viewed, there are some areas that probably could have.
That's what it kind of.
It could be better organized, probably a little bit. So I think this would be just getting the bleachers in. To me, is the most critical part to this.
I'll say this because I was here. I know all about Chisholm. Chisholm does not have conditioned storage underneath home or visitors. It's open on both sides. So, and that was a problem. And that's what that's what I think what Cletus fixed it on the Boswell home side, because all you can store under the bleachers at Chisholm and get out of the way, hurdles, machinery, equipment, rakes, stuff that you can't afford to get wet. So all of the stuff that needs conditioned storing at Chisholm is having to be put at other places and not under the home stands. Whereas at Boswell, there's going to be plenty of conditioned space under the home side. So kind of what my thoughts on the visitor side at Boswell would be to put unconditioned storage like we have at Chisholm, where you could put hurdles, things like that, because you do need places like that, because that's what they have underneath the visitors bleachers right now that Liz was talking about at Boswell, that's behind the chain link. That stuff could be locked up and out of sight if you had the unconditioned storage on the visitor side at Boswell.
That's
Which
what you're
would,
saying,
which would
it
not
automatically
cost the
now when you put it in.
$200 a foot to put in.
You'd automatically have that when you put them in, right?
I'm sorry.
You'd automatically have the unconditioned storage when you put them in.
Well, I think I think we could commit within the current project is we would put in what I'd call flat work. It'd be concrete underneath, and you'd see piers, columns go up to support the bleachers. You would see the bleachers, and then you would see the inlets to go into the bleachers. And then we would put the slab structurally so at some point in the future it could support having some either masonry or some form to put in there. That's what's going to cost so much money.
But would all that come from the contingency funds?
The bleachers, yes.
But not
But
that?
I do not know, I mean, the rough magnitude of 1.7, I mean, it's a large amount of money to put those stands in. So I can't stay up here and say that we could be within our contingency budget, putting all the storage in there right now.
Okay.
I think we could look at coming back at a different time and putting that storage in.
But I was making reference to, you mentioned the slab at the bottom, putting up the new visitor stands. Would all that be paid for by the contingency funds?
Yes, at any fallout dollars from
Okay,
another
and then
project.
later on, yes. Okay, thank you.
And and I mentioned it, I mentioned the auxiliary bleachers also, but again, that's, it's 800, it's a pretty good estimate. So we have to figure out exactly, get the pricing on this project, then see what the fallout dollars to do another project. And to be able to pull the home stands and these visitors before the first game, it's going to be a pretty big task because it will be a different crew putting those together. So we can't just reuse the ones that are on the home to come over and do the visitor because it just won't finish in time. So we'll need to coordinate some of that.
What kind of storage does Saginaw have? Just curious.
I don't think they
They're the same as Chisholm. It's a little smaller stadium because it was built the size of Boswell's originally.
Right.
But it's all unconditioned storage there. They don't have any conditioned underneath there either.
In the new high school, the new facilities would have conditioned.
They're sealed. Yes.
The conditional one you're talking about, Dr. Chavez said like you could have classrooms in there.
Yeah,
That
I was just-
overflow from the school, might as well.
Yeah, and I wasn't implying that's what we do. I was just saying that once you start conditioning a space, it nearly doesn't matter if it's a classroom or a storage room. So if you look at Chisholm Trail, for example, if it's a closet, it's about the same amount per square foot as a classroom minus technology. That's what I was getting at, is the minute you put heating, air conditioning, and fire suppression in.
Yeah, the heating would be there to keep the fire suppression from freezing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like Marine Creek where we put in that outbuilding there that's got the masonry around it. That's what it has.
So we're not planning on doing what Birdville did, for example, and putting classrooms underneath. I'm just saying the comparative cost.
But if we're good with the home side, or the visitor side, putting that and getting that, we'll move forward with that as far as the contingency funds. And then plan for the storage future, is you see where we're at with when the project's near completion. Because we wouldn't be able to, even if we had the money, we would not be able to put that masonry underneath it in time for the season to start. So. Lake Country Elementary, this time we got into the drone shot to kind of give you the big picture of how we're doing on this site. So you can notice that the roof on the, is in place on the cafeteria. It's going in the library and in the kitchen area. It's still black on the kitchen area, but it's well white, has the white reflective top on it. And again, if you notice that one thing that's missing in the front is the tornado shelter. Those panels will start showing up here in about 2 weeks. So if you remember, last we were doing Copper Creek, we were still trying to find them there, and they came in much later. So we feel good about getting that on schedule, that part of it. Front view of the library and the main entrance, and you can see the joist going in on the main entrance over the office area. And the back one, what I'd like to show you is the amount of grade that we had to deal with on this project. So that retaining wall, and that'll have a fence around, obviously on that retaining wall, but it encompasses at least 3/4 of the lot.
Does our property line go to that second cut there, Clete, our property line, does it go out to kind of where that graded area is?
The graded area, the blue silk fence,
Uh-huh.
that's pretty close where it's at.
Okay.
Moving to the gym night maintenance and operation facility, you can see the roof and the outer part shell is in place. It's a different color if you look at that, but that's 10 years of wear and tear on the roof. And this is a front view. This is the main office area to the right, and have an overview. And what I'd really like to point out is in the future, say 10, 15 years, there's still room for expansion in that area. So, and we have the 5 acres in the back that's still available for either bus expansion or whatever we need back in the back. So it's moving right along on this project, its own schedule. There's the inside. The biggest thing I think you would notice that it's 2 different buildings, even though it's tied together from the outside. Structurally, it's 2 different buildings. So you enter through the little garage doors that were existing there. And the racks, they're not in yet, and the wood hasn't been painted in this picture, but it will be. And the security upgrades are still moving along. They work during the holidays, and they'll continue to work on those. The central office, the job site trailer goes in tomorrow, so it'll be close to Marine Creek for the moment, and then it will eventually move down as soon as we get the pad site developed. And Eagle Mountain, we meet every week on that project, going over the design and development. And on the Wayside Middle School, so what we've done on that one, because we really don't know when our start date is on Wayside Middle School, we've got to be ready for when October. That's really the jumping off time for whatever year we decide to move forward with that. So we need to have all our plans ready and all the designs ready. So what we'd like to do is, I believe we have next month, so we'd like to show you what that would look like on this site and how the site would transition and stage with the original Wayside, the new Wayside, and these buildings. So we bring it to you next month. I think that in March we have the Eagle Mountain High School design, kind of showing that concept, what we have planned. So, if there's any other questions?
All right, thank you, Clete. All right, back to Human Resources Report and EMS ISD High School Graduate Signing Bonus Proposal, page 166.
Thank you for welcoming me back. And I really, I didn't know this was on the agenda. I didn't know Dr. Dawkins wasn't going to be here, but I'm really excited to have the opportunity to present this proposal to you today. We're celebrating public service, and I appreciate your service to our community. I was honored when Dr. Parker asked me to lead the committee for Aspire 2025, focused on retention and recruitment, but not just retention and recruitment, but aggressively going after retaining highly qualified personnel. And I love that you made that commitment to the word aggressive, because that is what this proposal is. This is an aggressive approach to say that our people matter. Our students are our greatest asset in this community. And what this proposal is doing is saying, hey, come home and give back to your community. This is about public service. So what we're proposing here is an actual signing bonus for EMS ISD high school graduates. Here's why this is so important. We already have students starting as early as the 9th grade that are committed to learning all about this wonderful profession. And we have an opportunity to go in, not only model and partner, but give an incentive. Say, hey, if you will commit to coming home and giving back and paying it forward, we want to reward you. So not only does this allow us to not go outside of our four walls, it allows us to do what we talked about in Inspire 2025, build a pipeline right in our system. Kids that we've known since they come to our schools, they get over to HCT, they get to our high schools, and they say, you know what? I think I might want to be a teacher. And then we have a way to make a connection. From the time they're 14, I have a young high school student right now, and she's making those choices. She's thinking about what I really want to be when I grow up. Well, what if I can come to you and say, hey, not only will we train you, but we'll stay connected to you all the way through your post-secondary education, and then welcome you back home with open arms. And oh, by the way, what matters to a lot of, college graduates, their salary. You're already competitive. Oh my gosh, you guys are amazing at keeping us at the top of the market. What this will do is allow us to take our own graduates and even boost their salary coming out of college a little bit more and increase their commitment right back here at home. Now that's aggressive. That is aggressive recruitment and retention. And that's what we're proposing here today. So I want to thank you for your public service, and I want to thank you for an opportunity to even propose something as aggressive as a signing bonus for our very own students. So I will take the time to read it because that is what I'm here to do. The administration is recommending the following signing bonus for consideration. This signing bonus is a recruitment and retention incentive for EMS ISD high school graduates who return to the district to pursue their teaching career. This incentive aligns with our strategy 2.1. I had an outstanding committee to work with on this strategy to aggressively pursue and retain highly qualified personnel. The signing bonus would be made available to EMS ISD high school graduates beginning with the graduating class of 2016. Well, this is powerful because those kids are coming out of college right now. And so we have an opportunity to make that connection. So we are asking that you consider that, and we'll be bringing it back for potential approval next month. And I will certainly take any questions that you may have.
Questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ready to sign up? That concludes our 5 o'clock report. We now move to routine monthly reports. Any questions on those? Seeing none, that moves us to review the 2021 board planning calendar. Dr. Chadwell.
Yes, sir. This is on page 275 of your packet. Please note the finance report will start with a legislative update and a budget status report. We'll start to work more significantly on the 21-22 budget. It's already that time, and one of the things I was going to mention earlier is that we will spend some time talking about our compensation plan a little bit earlier this year, and so you'll hear more about that earlier on going into this next year's budget. We also have a quarterly demographic report, which will be especially important as we plan for this next year in terms of the number of seats and numbers of teachers. Also a construction update. Ed Services has a pre-kindergarten report, teacher incentive allotment report, technology update, and also, as we mentioned earlier, we'll we'll either add the special education report here or in March, but quite possibly here. Okay, she's saying March, okay. So that would be 3 ed reports for February, and then we'll do the special education report in March. If you have any questions on any of these items, most of these are pretty straightforward and items that have been brought to you annually.
All right, thank you. Next is the consent agenda for approval.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Liz, second by Paige to approve the consent agenda. Questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 6-0. Board President announcements. I again just want to thank everyone in the schools for our gifts and our tokens of appreciation and our posters that are up in the walls. We always feel appreciated, but we especially feel appreciated in January, and so we appreciate leadership and principals and the students that took the time and effort to come up with these items for Board Appreciation Month. So thank you very much. And we look forward to getting back, I said earlier, getting back out into the schools when the time allows us to.
You know, when you said that earlier, Mr. Newcomb, it made me think about how different everything is for everyone, and that is something as a board member, you know, this heavy compensation of $0 per year, but your payday is to be out there seeing what happens for kids. That's why you serve, and that's the one thing that's been significantly affected during COVID, and so I know that that's really hard. I was talking to a number of people over the break, including some students, and we all know that this is a difficult time, and I don't think we need to accept it as normal. Obviously, we're ready for things to get better, and as has been mentioned several times today, you know, we're planning for the future, and we're planning for a future in which COVID's in the rearview mirror, excuse me, and we're ready for that, so we're not slowing down there, and so I appreciate y'all and your service in making that possible. Under the announcements on page 302, there's a number of items coming up. We do have the student holiday on February the 15th, and we also have the STEM showcase, which will be done virtually this year, March 1st to the 5th. We also have the bad weather makeup days, and so if the weather we have right now is indicative, we're never going to use a bad weather day because it's going to never freeze. But anyway, we do have this built into our schedule. We have also 2 additional days built in. So our first 2 days would not be bad weather days. They'd be the accumulated minutes that we have built into our calendar. So thank you all very much again for your service. And we're looking forward to being in the classrooms. I was so ready to come back today. As some people know, I've been out, and for the same reason many people have been out, and it was great to be back in the office, but I'll tell you what'll be even better is being back in classrooms, because that's why we serve. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shelby. Seeing there's no further business to come before this meeting, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Liz, second by Marilyn. We're adjourned.
Are you